welcome back to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today I have a really fun guest for you who is working with Reiki infused art. Her name is Caroline Vu. She's a Los Angeles-based artist. She doesn't just do Reiki infused art, but she does an energy focus on the work that she does to help people achieve their goals, and sometimes to heal their trauma, and sometimes to overcome their obstacles. Now, this is working with the same principle that almost all magic does, where you funnel and channel your personal energy through focus into something. Sometimes it's a spell, but sometimes it's an object. Sometimes we enchant all of my jewelry. I don't wear jewelry in real life. If you run into me in real life, I will not have any jewelry on. All of this is enchanted to protect me from anything that I might encounter throughout the course of my work. Other objects can do the same thing, and that's what Caroline Vu's work is doing. There's a primary focus for healing because she is a stage 4 breast cancer survivor. And we're going to turn over to Caroline in just a moment, but that's our topic for today. And remember, I got to do the housekeeping at the top of this so that people know where to find me. I'm Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a life coaching session or a tarot card reading session. I have a Patreon as well with daily guidance Monday through Friday. That's going to be available in the episode notes and in the description box down below. Remember, there are always video versions of these interviews on my YouTube channel that will also be linked in the description box down below for the audio version. Hey, Caroline, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, Elaine. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for joining me today. You do something that's fascinating. Absolutely every person that I've talked to about it is like, I want one of those. I told them I
Right.
was going to have a Reiki painter on, and they hadn't heard of it. Where can people find you? Before we even get into what you do, where can people find your stuff? Let's do your housekeeping at the top too.
My website is carolinevu.com, and I'm on Instagram, and it's Caroline Vu Art. I do have my link tree peppered around all of my sites, so you can find my other media articles, all that there. But the main one is carolinevu.com.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. How did you even get into this?
Yeah, that goes back 10 years. When after I got diagnosed and I'd gone through treatment, I wanted to be intentional with how I live my life and just incorporate joy. And, one example is exercise. I didn't want to just go to the gym, but I wanted to make it fun. And so I was finding ways to enjoy myself more. And I started to explore art. And then I realized I absolutely love painting. And the more I thought about what I love and just incorporating joys into my life, I thought I can bridge together what I use for my healing with art. And
Right.
so, in a nutshell, that's how I started the Reiki paintings.
Now, what had you done in a professional capacity before? And by the way, like extreme medical trauma and emotional trauma are often the very things that allow us to look within to examine the quality of our life and what we're doing with it. So it is often, it's a serendipity, I guess, but it's a harsh form of serendipity.
Yeah.
People often find themselves guided towards a purposeful journey through their own trauma, and it sounds like that's what happened to you. But what was your path before that?
Oh, my path was just all over the place. I was in mortgage doing escrow, and then I was kind of tired of that. So I started a baking business, and then I became much more mindful of my health. I started noticing symptoms, and I became a health coach. And ironically, right after that happened, I got diagnosed, and it took me on a completely separate path. And I've learned so much about wellness and just goes beyond the physical, the diet, all that exercise. It goes much more beyond.
But true, any holistic approach to your overall well-being will start to encompass the energetic, the emotional, a greater understanding of self, and allowing yourself space to deal with the things that we don't want to sometimes, like anger, frustration, or illness. But it
Mhm.
really can give us greater clarity about what the true quality of our life is. So when you are creating, did you begin creating art and then study Reiki, or was it the other way around?
Reiki was more of like during treatment. Before I got diagnosed, I was getting into meditation and learning about energy. And throughout my journey, I was just diving in deeper and learning about that. And, for example, I was listening to an affirmation track and doing visualization every day for 4 years while going through treatment. So that came first. The art came after my diagnosis. And that was something that, I just wanted to start taking classes to find something that I enjoy. And I still can't believe that I've discovered art this late in life. I'm baffled by it. I absolutely love it.
I think that is one of the most wonderful things that is part of an existence is that remember, as long as you're still breathing, brand new rebirth can be possible, even through, again, the most traumatic of circumstances. And that it is never too late to find what your true gift is. Sometimes we have to kind of like wade through the poo to have the fertilized land where good things grow from. And that
Yeah.
is really what apparently happened to you. When you have a client, are they commissioning you for a Reiki piece to help them achieve a particular goal? Or do you meet with a client and assess the goal and then create a piece that you feel will be best for them?
It could go either way. A recent commission that I did was for a woman who recently got diagnosed with breast cancer. And, I had a conversation with her about her life. And, I asked for, this is one example. I asked for like a dozen, 10 to 12 photos, and I can go through it, um, kind of assess like what she's looking for and use the photos and kind of think like how can I use that as source material to paint something that will inspire her and keep her focused on yeah, she's going through something really, really rough, but that doesn't have to be the end of it. She can just come back to this image of like, this is what I want, if that
One
makes sense.
one thing, yes, it does. It genuinely does. And it's great to know that you have that flexibility, that if somebody comes in with a, I'm focusing on this, that you can accommodate that. And if somebody comes in saying, I'm not really sure I know what I need, that you can help them discover the path towards the energetic input that they need to be exposing themselves to. Because we use crystals, we use meditations, we use different ways of accessing universal energy. So the idea that an image created specifically for your goals would then help you harness the universal energy to achieve them makes perfect sense to me. It's always fascinating to me because I just had another cancer survivor on. He's currently still engaged in a long-term battle with it, Terry Tucker. And it's always very humbling for somebody like me who has been, when I have something go wrong, it's very easily resolved. I come from, my grandfather was a Scottish coal miner, my grandmother and my mother are both from Scotland as well. And something about that Celtic stock, you practically have to kill us with things to get us to die. But I have been really impressed and humbled by how often a threat to somebody's overall physical well-being and even up into their life has inspired them to reach out more towards others rather than drawing within. And that is, I think, a very important and key component of the idea of channeling universal energy for healing that then benefits you as well. Because whenever we're really trying to resolve a personal difficulty, one of the things that can truly help is stepping outside of self. It is the ego death concept in spirituality to give to another, because ultimately what we give to another is also what we are giving to ourselves. And
Yes.
so it does make sense to me that this was the path that led you to something that you might have turned away from. Do you have a particular medium that you like to create art in?
I started with soft pastels and charcoal,
Mhm.
but I switched over to acrylic paint, and then now I'm on oil paint, but it's water-based oil because oil paint is pretty toxic. And so it's a little it's quite, I mean, it's a hybrid of the two. It's more safe, but it's a little bit quirky, so I've had to kind of do some workarounds with the water-based oil paint.
And that's like with any craft, again, like likening it a little bit to magic. With any craft, there is going to be a period of development in which it will
Mm.
ever be, like, remember, you don't start out being what you will end up being. It is a rare, rare situation where
Yeah,
who you are on day one is who you are on day 952. You
right.
have to go through a process of finding what works for you and honing a craft, which is what it sounds like as you've developed into a more like, because I know oil is a slightly unforgiving medium as well, even when you're working with the water-based oils, that it does require more precision and more intent in what you're doing, that it's less malleable as an energy.
Yeah, because there's a waiting period as opposed to acrylic where if you change your mind, it dries so instantly you can just go over it.
Do you have any client stories, anybody that you worked with that you saw the end results where it was really the first time that you're like, this is working. I understand what this is doing for other people. Because that's something that happens as well. We discover our gifts by seeing the results as well.
Yeah, the woman that I mentioned earlier, she I think it was maybe I'd have to look back, maybe a couple weeks after receiving her painting, she had gone in for a scan and they didn't see anything. And so she was just still completing treatment, but there was no more evidence of the tumor that they had before. So I was just like, oh my God, like just, I still get surprised and amazed at just learning about energy and vibration and how it all comes together when you put your intention on it. I mean, she's doing everything. She's got support. She's doing the meditation. She's, asking for support in multiple ways, including getting a tool like a Reiki painting to, every day she gets up and she meditates and she looks at that painting and she just recently moved it into her bedroom because she changed her routine a bit. So yeah, that was just really lovely to hear.
And that also goes back to the idea that there are many components to physical wellness that involve emotional wellness as well. When somebody assembles a healing toolkit like that, where it's a Reiki painting, where it's meditation, where it's diet, where it's exercise, in which they're trying to address all the different components of their energetic and their emotional life in order to heal that as well. It sounds like your client was wise enough to not put all of her eggs in one energetic basket, which will always give the best result as well. Speaking of results, when you create a work for a client, do you have a method that you want them to follow in order to access that particular energy? Does it work best after like clearing, grounding, meditating? Or is it something that it almost works like a battery within an environment where it helps charge the energy around them?
I think it's best when they do some sort of grounding or meditation just to, get centered.
Mhm.
And, ideally it's right after waking up or before bed when you're closer to alpha state or in alpha state. And to look at the image and just bring you back to like, this is what is possible. And to become more receptive, open yourself up, um, and return to that continually. That's what I did for myself.
Mhm.
And I feel like that was a huge part of, combining medicine and thought work because when I had gone to, I went to so many doctors in the beginning just to decide my path. I was really I was really afraid of medicine and chemotherapy. But the one thing that I remember doctors, holistic naturopaths, and conventional doctors both said was that mindset was important. And that was the one thing that I remember that they agreed on. And so it stuck with me. And so, um, yeah, for a person using a tool, it's best to, kind of just find your ground, center yourself, if you're feeling stressed, to calm yourself down first
Mhm.
and then concentrate and then be in relaxed focus.
That's when I'm talking to people who draw tarot cards as well for themselves to get their guidance. And it's for me as well. I have to remember that the cards are not a soothing technique, that there's something to be reached for when I'm in a balanced state so that I can get clear and accurate answers. and that there are other things that I need to do if I wake up in a difficult mood or I'm anxious or something, that I engage in the practice that helps then ground and then realign my energy before I try and connect to a healing tool. Because I use tarot as a healing tool, you're using art as a healing tool as well. And so that it's not acting as a pain medication as much as it is a healing aid. And there is a difference. Pain medication is the cessation of an uncomfortable sensation, but healing is improving the overall sensation and taking people from one state of being ill into a state of well-being. Um, One of the things, do you do any end of life work with people? Because every now and then I do have a client who I'm counseling through an end of life stage, because not all battles are won on this earthly plane, and there is something beyond that. So for people who are facing a less than rosy prognosis, where they're trying to weigh out the odds of, like, is this going to work out for me? Do you have something that would help with that as well? Because it sounds like you would.
No, not at the moment. I don't.
Okay.
I would be open to helping somebody. I've definitely had some losses. I lost my father to cancer and a close friend just recently, but at the moment, no, it's yeah, that would have to be explored later on, and I'd have to think about how that would come about and play out.
It seems like it would be a third eye or a crown chakra connection, something connect, because when we are leaving behind the physical realm, connecting more and more to the divine self is one of the things that lessens the arduous nature, the difficult or the painful nature of the journey towards that. Because we all have one thing in common, literally every single last one of us. We were born and someday we will die. And we have to demystify the idea of death as being something to be frightened of. It is best to have the best time in this physical life while we can, but to not fear what might be on the other side of it, and instead to embrace it as another form of adventure. And so that's
Right.
why I was asking about that,
Mhm.
because I do have a client who is not likely to fully recover. And as we've talked about things, that has been an avenue that we're beginning to open up. Not to take hope away from anybody, it never hurts to have hope. But the idea of making peace with the finite quality of our existence can actually add resonance and joy to it rather than detract from it, because nothing in this life is permanent. We aren't permanent. Now, how do you get if somebody just comes to you and says, make whatever you want, make whatever you want, how would you get your vision for them?
If it's only that, that would be a challenge. I would need some inkling, some crumb of what they're looking for, something, some issue, some challenge, and not even something negative, but something that they aspire to, and that would be helpful. But I could definitely work with somebody. It's just I need some little crumb of like what you need, what you want, you know. I mean, art is it's so wide that, you know, if you want something fully rendered versus an abstraction, you know, for example, if somebody wanted to, um, I don't know, take on like a, I can't even think of something, I don't know, climbing Mount Everest,
Right.
and they wanted some inspiration in that, but they wanted something that's an abstraction instead of like a painting of a mountain, that I can work with. It can be as little as information as that much that I can work with.
Now, for anybody seeing the video, you're already aware of this, but for anybody who's just on the audio, behind Carolyn, and whenever I turn my head like that, Carolyn, my monitor's over here, my camera's over there. I'm usually staring dead into a camera. Behind Carolyn are some of the art that she's created. There's a lot of emphasis on the crown chakra color as well as the third eye color. And then I've got the yellow in your flowers as well, which is one of the colors for personal power. So I thought that was really interesting when you came on camera, that it's like, oh, look, there's divine connection colors directly behind you. Um,
Yeah.
when was the first time that you felt that connection? You felt your own guidance as you were creating? Because presumably you started art and then one day you felt very guided in what you were doing, or as if you were channeling an energy. Or it might not have worked that way. How did it work for you?
I wouldn't say it's down to one moment. It's been over the years that there's been um, small moments of just realization of there's something more, or me in the moments that I'm more open, I'm receptive to hearing a message, whether it's very obvious through somebody recommending a book or hearing something that somebody said, or just little epiphanies that happen here and there over the years. And then also just reading and educating and learning about psychology and energy and talking to like-minded people.
Now you're really speaking my language there. Half of what I do on the podcast is talk about spiritual concepts in conjunction with psychological theory, data, and what is known about our emotional construction. It's about representing different elements when you get right down to it. And when we talk about grounding, the earth element, which is everything in this 3D world, gather information from that, gather tools from that, because everybody that you work with in a healing modality is going to be in an earth-based existence. So it is one of the things that you do want to represent. Now, if somebody is not trying to heal something, if it isn't just about healing a trauma or an illness, can it just be about achievement? Like, hey, I have a small business, I'm trying to make it work out. Do you do work that is basically imbued with success energy?
Oh, definitely. Yes. That's one of the examples that I turn to in my work. It's not just about healing, but having a goal and just keeping that in mind, and like and or celebrating like you've reached a milestone. So yeah, definitely.
Now, are you able to use your work to help yourself as well, or is it a gift you can only give to others?
I've done a couple to help myself. Yeah.
And are you comfortable sharing what you were trying to achieve with that, or what you gleaned from it, or what the results were?
Well, for example, this one back here, some of them are not intentional in the beginning. I'm just creating art. And then it turns into something. And then sometimes I don't know what that is until it's finished. Sometimes I don't know until just midway, or sometimes afterwards. It's like, oh, that was the meaning. That's why I chose this composition. But for this one, this was off of a photo that I took um, on a trip in Paris with my family, and it was just coming back out from the hallway. And this is supposed to be like walking back into the cafe, and to the right there's seating, but here is supposed to be a kitchen, and there's a woman standing, and she was just in pants, and behind her is like cups and shelving and all that. And I just changed it to outdoor scenery. And the meaning for me behind it is that it's a path to something different.
Mhm.
And so I kind of abstracted the background, and if you look up closely, it's more like kind of like a flower blooming. So it's just
Yeah.
like this kind
It
of
looks like a
serene.
garden. It looks like she is
Yeah.
part of a garden. It looks like she is part of an organic force flowing through a doorway. And there
Mhm.
are doorways are very important imageries in tarot and oracle cards, in art as well, because one of the things that they represent is our power of choice. And no matter what happens to us, no matter what's occurring, no matter what we're faced with or trying to accomplish, the success of our endeavors lies almost entirely in the choices that we make, right up to and including how we are choosing to view a situation. And so it's fascinating to me that you saw somebody in a very mundane situation and you turned it into something that I've seen that imagery echoed in a lot of inspiration cards, because doorways and the choice to walk through into a new direction is one of the spiritual concepts that has to do with being a crossroad guide. And we are really are throughout our lives presented with different crossroads moments. Which way are you going to take this?
Mhm.
And that is what the struggles in our life are trying to help us understand. And one of the things I read in your bio was about kind of embracing the struggles that are around us to find what we can make out of them, how we can heal from them, and what we can learn from them.
Mhm.
And that is something that when you meet with somebody, is it just about the art, or are you helping them to understand their own struggles, their own journey, and any of because I know you do a form of coaching as well. What do you like to coach people through, and what are your methods?
I like to coach people who are going through what I've gone through, going through just like a big life change, and then finding your way back to gaining your footing.
Yeah.
After going through treatment, I struggle with chronic fatigue daily. And so that is every single day that I have to deal with. And so um, I think the experiences that we have are there for us to learn and grow from.
Mhm.
And I've definitely learned a lot about just pacing as a having a chronic illness. Um, there are days where I'm on top of it. I've got it down. And then there are days, where it's just decades of me, leading up to my diagnosis of the way I was living. I think a lot of people live that way of just doing, being busy all
Yeah.
the time. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes something big like a cancer diagnosis to make you stop, reassess your whole life. And so, my mission is to help people find their way back, reset, and live your life in a more intentional, joyful way that, you know, serves you better. And if it serves you better, it serves the people around you better.
In the concept that you're referring to in the before and after of like the life you lived before, you had your basically your tower moment, your divine intervention, your like everything built on a faulty foundation must fall, so the rug is getting pulled out from underneath you, and you have stage 4, breast cancer. The thing that made you reevaluate and reassess and look at your life in a different manner is that in the before category, which before people achieve like a spiritual awakening or spiritual enlightenment, or even just like that tiny little spark that says, there's something more, this isn't enough for me. It does not have to be cataclysmic. But in the before life, our society teaches us that success and happiness are destinations that we are always striving to get to, rather than being the energy in which we can inhabit, that we're always there if we choose to be. If we take care of ourselves, if we view what's going on around us not as a punishment or something that's holding us back, but something that's asking us to stay within a space until we understand it and understand ourselves in that energy. And that in fact, success, happiness, wellness, all of the things that we are pursuing are not things that need to be chased, but rather things that need to be inhabited in the moment to moment. And so that is one of the things that any sort of cataclysmic event in a life can help with. And that's a really interesting concept that like beforehand, like you were a baker, you were a mortgage banker, which like I used to be married to a mortgage banker. It's a really difficult industry. And I can understand why you went towards let's make confections instead,
Yeah.
because that would be a lot more of a like, that would feel like being in a playland in some ways.
Yeah. It
But
was a
that
complete 180.
yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. And then it sounds like the universe basically constructed a square for you because you were always taking these very sharp turns into something else from the mortgage industry, which is fueled by materialism. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of the things that make our world not, the healthiest place to be. I mean, money's great because it makes us all comfortable, but there's a point at which we lose focus in our lives about what happiness really is. And we have an entire society convinced that a pile of money is what will make them happy. And even the people with piles of money, because you and I are both in LA and we meet a lot of people with piles of money,
Mhm.
it does not actually convey happiness. What it does often convey is confusion over why people aren't happy.
Mhm.
It can be even more distressing to people to understand that they do not have emotional joy and resonance simply from having a pile of money. Now, please don't get me wrong. You can still have emotional joy and resonance with a pile of money, but you won't care that much about it
Mhm.
because true joy and emotional resonance exist within us, not in what we are doing or what we're trying to achieve or where we're trying to get.
Mhm.
And that's really the goal of all forms of energetic and emotional healing. I know you do Reiki paintings, but I know that's not all you do. So, when you're doing art that is not Reiki infused, what's the inspiration and what's the goal with it?
Um, the inspiration is a variety of things. It could be a line from a song. Um, it could be a clip from a movie, a color combination I saw, just like, a post-it on a book, like the color of the post-it and the color of the book cover. And more recently, it's been more of just what's kind of at the forefront, um, collectively, meaning, there's more attention to gender roles and the patriarchy and
Mm.
motherhood. And so I've been thinking about those things a lot more. And so that's how it's separate from the spiritual work because it's exploration of my thoughts and where we are as a society.
Right.
Um, so yeah, definitely gender roles, being a woman of color, plays into how my art is currently like the pieces I'm currently working on.
Yeah, I just completed a 4-year period of what's called hermetic training so that I could be considered a high priestess in celestial and angelic magic. And it does involve like a lot of self-sacrifice and deprivation and living a very simplified life by choice. It's almost like a monastic type of existence in
Mhm.
order to have a greater connection to spiritual access, to my guides, to personal power, to magical healing power as well. And part of the reason I did that is exactly what you're talking about, which we have a world that has a great deal of energetic imbalance in it as it is. There is not a lot, it's difficult to achieve energetic and emotional balance in a world that lacks it in terms of fairness, in terms of equality, in terms of opportunity, in terms of like if you're put into a box from the day that you are born, it takes a cataclysmic or a shocking event sometimes to get you out of that box. And outside of that box, it's hard to describe a house that you're standing in, but when you're on the outside of it, you can see it very clearly indeed. And a lot of the women that I know in particular, because women do have a lot of magical energy within them, men are not precluded from it. But remember, women's bodies create life. And it is one of the reasons that it's just a little bit easier for women to reach for the creative magic in the universe and act as a channel or as a focus tool for it. When you're finally outside of the, I'm trying to work within this system and instead something jarring or even just an epiphany where you realize this is not right. When you start to try and work on the outside of it to help restore energetic balance, it doesn't just become about your personal goals. It becomes about the ways in which you are trying to act within the world as a tribe, as a family, as a collective. And when you are reaching for that collective energy, it then becomes something that fuels your own journey, fuels your own development of the gifts that you have. So whenever people are stuck in an energetic rut, the first thing to do that I tell clients is start stepping outside of yourself to start feeling what you would like to do to make the world around you a better place to inhabit. And when you do that, it becomes a better place for you to inhabit as well. So there's always worth in questioning the power structures because power structures corrupt over time, and that is part of the problem with the patriarchy. It is not that there aren't good men. There are good men. Of course, there are good men. I have a son. There are good men. But there are too many people who have been participating in an unfair power structure. And so that's part of the reason I really like to try to talk to the people who are about harnessing personal power, because when you start harnessing personal power and applying it in a more global or a macro sense, it increases your personal power. It's the strangest thing.
Yeah,
So you work with people on their life's purpose journey as well, is kind of what it sounds like.
yeah. I can do paintings for life purpose journeys.
Is there anything that you don't like to do with painting? Because it's a form of magic that you're doing, even though you're not terming it magic, it is about a personal energy focus, which is what magic is.
Mhm. Is there anything that I don't like to do with painting? Um, I feel like there's a yes, but I can't remember it at the
Yeah,
moment.
there's got to be a yes in that because like it has to
Yeah.
do with intent. And like, so if somebody came to you and was like, I really can't get over my ex, I need you to bring my focus is on bringing misfortune down into him by, winning in court or something. Anything that does not have good intent behind it, I'm assuming would be
Yeah, good,
included.
anything that doesn't have good intent or just kind of like in a forceful way instead of saying, like when you brought up that example of having a partner, it's like, well, you may want this particular partner, you
Yeah,
may be attached to the idea, but maybe that's not the partner for you. And
right.
instead of asking for that specific person, you remain open to say, I would like a supportive partner. I don't know what that looks like, and I'm open to it. And so it wouldn't be so specific in that way.
Wow, I think I'm about to make your business blow all the way up. Can you do Reiki paintings to help people attract their soulmate, their partner?
Yeah,
Yeah, well
yeah.
then,
It's
well,
about attracting your desires, but as long as it comes from
right.
a good place instead of like a malicious place, but like wanting and giving love as long as it's from an honest place.
Right. If it's not from a need-based place, like I can't be happy unless I find my person, because realistically, we all have to be our own person first.
Mhm.
Because, like, until we learn how to love ourselves, take care of ourselves, honor ourselves, and respect ourselves, it's more difficult to spot when somebody else isn't. And so, like, doing the work for yourself first is the
Mhm.
thing that will give you the best outcomes. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with then wanting that more, wanting the family, wanting the partner, or wanting the whatever stage of life you're in.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with wanting somebody who is an equal partner to share your journey after that. And like, I don't do targeted love magic, and I tell people, please don't. It doesn't work quite the way you think it does.
Mhm.
Emotionally influential magic has a rebound effect on it that
Mhm.
can really like it's a little bit of a fishtailing thing. It kind of has a tendency to whip you in the butt.
Yeah.
And like not terribly. It's just that influencing somebody else's will cost you in your own, and that's just kind of the way that part works. And we all do it as younger people. Like most people, as they get into magic, they experiment with like what's okay to do and what's not. So it's not about judging or shaming. It never is. It's just
Mhm.
about getting the best outcomes that you can. And when you're talking about love, when you're talking about searching for a partner, that is the thing you want to do, is to have the right person brought to me, have the person who's meant to be with me at this stage of the journey, have a loving, kind, compassionate person brought to me. And like, hey, if you want the whole, fire and lust and everything in there, then that can also be something that you're asking for. Because truly, what you're doing, I know Reiki is a form of healing and a form of targeted energy, but you are working with a form of enchantment. And so it is definitely reaching for universal magic. Caroline, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing about what you do and what you would like people to know about their own healing journey? Because you've been through it, and so I know you have a lot to share in terms of like how you get through it. Because there's somebody out there listening to this who has had the worst news ever, and they don't know how to cope with it. You had the worst news ever, and you had to cope with it. So, what do you have to share about your journey and your work with it?
Um, the first thing that comes to mind, the main thing that comes to mind is mindset, is what I was told by all the doctors that I saw. And if you keep returning back to that by having support, by having a guide, by having tools, um, you can get through it. And we all have our ups and downs. We have terrible days of having a huge diagnosis, some disaster happening, but you find your way back to center and you keep your vision in mind. And it's really mindset. It's, you know, what is it? 95% of our thoughts are subconscious and 5% are conscious. Well, it may just be 5%, but you can take control of your life by directing and forming your life in a way that you're healing your past traumas, you're paying attention to your subconscious thoughts and how they're not serving you, and redirect the direction that you're going to. Because apparently, I think when something big happens, you have to reassess and figure out what direction were you going in the past, and you know tilt it over a little bit, turn your compass just a couple of degrees, and it takes you in a completely different direction.
The choice that we have after, and always allow yourself to like process the devastation. Please don't like jump immediately towards, I will turn this to the positive. Emotional repression doesn't help anybody. That the energy is still just there. When we're talking about the idea that 5% of our thoughts are conscious and the other, the 95% are subconscious, think of a pyramid. And when you look at a pyramid, what are you looking at? You're looking at the very top of it. You're looking at the peak, which comprises the smallest percentage of the pyramid, but it is the thing that draws the focus. And so that's how that 5% works as well. It is your focus determining tool, the thing that adjusts your vision, that is the lens eye on where your energy will go. So that's why the 5% can then rule the 95%, and no matter what journey you're taking, no matter what journey you're taking. And we do have arduous journeys. We think we want these really, really, really easy lives, but we won't know who we are until we're challenged. You discover your strengths through your challenges. You can discover what you like or don't like about yourself and wish to work on through your challenges. And then when joy comes along again after a challenging period, and it will, there will be a day, no matter what calamity you face, there will be a day where something will break through on that. The feeling that you have will be that much more easy to appreciate because it is not a common state. It is
Mhm.
not the energy that you're always dwelling in. It stands out, so it brings that joy and that bliss. And joy and bliss can be found through struggles when you look for the meaning in what is brought to you. And it's never a punishment, even when it's something that is very difficult to get through. It is an opportunity for us to know ourselves better in the grander scheme of things. And it sounds like your work helps people along that path. It's almost like a lantern that they can hold up to light the path so that they can direct their 5% in the direction that will lead them to the best outcomes, to the healthiest, to the happiest, and to the most magical outcomes. Okay, guys, that was Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Thank you so much for joining me again. You can find me at The Rising Moon. Book me for a life coaching session or a tarot card reading. You can also find me on my Patreon, linked at all the things below as per usual. And on my YouTube channel, you can see this video and get a glimpse of Caroline's art. And then Caroline, one more time, where can people find you?
CarolineVu.com, and on Instagram, it's Caroline Vu Art.
And that is Vu with a V, like Victor. Just in case both of our mics are letting us down on enunciation. It was hard to hit the V's hard.
Yeah.
That was Logical Magic. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, in beauty is art, and in struggle there are lessons.